Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The sun was dropping low over Arizona, laying a bronze shine across the cliffs like someone had dragged a branding iron over the stone. Heat still bled off the rock, but the wind had cooled, carrying sage and dust and the wide silence that makes a man listen to his own heartbeat. Eli Boone eased his bay horse, Dusty, down a switchback trail he knew well enough to ride blind. A little sack of doctoring supplies tapped against the saddle horn. Liniment, clean cloth, a twist of willow bark. Nothing fancy, just enough to help a sick hand out at a ranch 2 valleys over. Eli liked a quiet trail. You learn things in the hush, how a hawk folds into a dive, how stone answers hoof, how your own breath can steady your hands. Out here there's no crowd to clap or jeer, just the country taking your measure. He was halfway through a dry wash when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to wind or cattle or coyote, thin at first, then breaking. A woman's cry, hurt, scared, stubborn. Eli pulled the reins so quick Dusty planted all 4, threw his head, snorted like he'd sniffed snake. The cry came again, swallowed by canyon walls, then stuttered out. "Easy," Eli murmured to the horse, patting the neck. To the wind, he said, "All right, I hear you." He turned Dusty toward the echo, clattering down the wash, letting instinct and the canyon's throat guide him. Mesquite scratched his boots. A quail burst and skittered. The smell of iron, blood, caught in his lungs right before he saw the busted slope, the rock field, and a dark shape crumpled near a fallen pony. She lay half in shadow, half in that hard amber light of late day. Black hair tangled with dust and burrs. A split in her shoulder seam, skin scraped raw. Her hand pressed tight to her back, fingers stiff like they weren't sure what to hold on to. When Eli slid off and crouched, she turned her face just enough that he could see the fire in her eyes, the kind that says, "Come closer and I'll bite." "Ma'am," he said, gentle as he could make it. "You're hurt." Her jaw set. "Go away, cowboy." "Can't do that." He let her watch his hands, empty, slow, open. "Sun'll be gone in a blink. Night air'll cut like a knife. I got a coat and a fire in me if you'll take either." She shifted and couldn't hide the pain. A sound came out of her throat that would have shamed a bull rider. She rolled her face away, stared at the cliff, said nothing. Eli studied how she held herself, how ribs breathe when they don't want to, the pinch at her spine. "I'm gonna check your back," he said. "Just my hands. Nothing else." He slid 2 fingers along the line of her spine, feeling for breaks, for anything wrong that would turn a careful carry into a death sentence. At the first press, she gasped and snapped, "Easy, cowboy." The words weren't sweet. They were a warning and a dare. "I hear you," he said. "Easy it is." He listened to her breath, watched the rise, counted. "Ribs are bruised," he said after a beat. "Back's angry but not broken. You're gonna hate me for 10 minutes, then maybe not." She gave him a look that could have bucked a strong horse. He slid his arm under her shoulders anyway, the other under her knees, and felt how light she was under all that grit and iron. When he lifted, her teeth clenched, her breath hitched like a misfired round, but she didn't cry out again. Her hand locked on his shirt. He moved slow, a man shouldering a church bell, and set her sideways across Dusty's blanket. Dusty felt her weight and flicked an ear. "Good boy," Eli told him. "Mind your manners." A miner's shack crouched up ahead, half hidden by tan rock and a tangle of catclaw. Eli had seen it before. A 3-walled apology to the word house, roof patched with whatever the last fella's conscience allowed. It kept wind out. Sometimes that's all a place needs to be holy. He led Dusty there, step by careful step, then eased the woman down onto a bed of old hay. she hissed through her teeth. Eli shrugged off his coat and tucked it around her like he'd tuck dirt around a fence post. Firm, sure, leaving no gaps. He knelt and struck a match, coaxed a stingy fire out of dry sticks and stubborn will. Kept the flame low. No reason to tell the whole country he'd found something worth stealing. When he offered his canteen, she watched him like the water might be a trick. Pride can burn hotter than fever. Finally, she took it, drank small, handed it back like it cost her. "Why help me?" she asked, voice the scrape of gravel. "Because a person's a person," he said, "and it's the right thing." She muttered something in her language. Soft, tight, not meant for him. He caught one word and let it hang. When he tried to spread a folded cloth under her shoulder so straw wouldn't bite, she flinched and said it again. Different this time. Almost a tired smile wrapped around an ache. "Easy, cowboy." "That your favorite line?" he asked, a corner of his mouth hitching. "I can get used to it." Silence settled slow. The fire took. The shack breathed warm. And outside the wind went to talking with the stone like old friends do. Eli opened the little leather pouch, mixed willow bark with a swallow of water, mashed it into a paste with the butt of his knife, and smeared it along the reddened skin, careful as prayer. She winced, then fixed her eyes on him, a look that measured weight and worth. "What's your name?" he asked finally. A long beat. "Tala." "Tala," he repeated, letting it find its place on his tongue. "I'm Eli Boone, just a cowhand passing through." "Cowhand with a doctor's box," she said, and something like amusement flickered quick and faint. "Don't tell on me," he said. "Ranchers around here still think stitches are sorcery." Her eyes slid to the fire. Heat put color back into her face in soft, slow pulses. Shadows climbed the wall, turned her profile into a cut of stone and light. She shifted, and the breath caught sharp again. "You treat me like I am weak," she whispered, not looking at him. "No, ma'am," he said. "I treat you like you matter." That took the fight out of the air for a time. The shack listened. The crackle of mesquite, the brittle whisper of hay, the small sound a coat makes when it lifts and settles with each breath. Eli sat by the door, half in the fire's wash, half in the cool draft, so he could hear the canyon's mouth and the breathing behind him at the same time. When he judged the paste had numbed the worst of it, he cut a strip from clean cloth and bound her shoulder. Snug, not cruel. She watched his hands, not his face. "You're steady," she said at last. "Had to be," he said, "else a saddle'll teach you about gravity." Her mouth tilted, not quite a smile. "Your horse, he listens. That's Dusty, he's smarter than he lets on." They let the fire have the talking for a while. Eli's eyes went to the crack under the roofline, where the last light threaded gold through dust. A coyote barked somewhere far off, one sound, then another. The earth shifted into the kind of night that belongs to creatures that don't need lamps. Tala blinked slow, fighting sleep like it owed her money. "If I close my eyes," she murmured, "you will leave." "No, ma'am," Eli said. "I'll keep watch." A small, grudging peace settled over her features. Her lashes lowered. Her breathing found a long, even swing. In the quiet that followed, the shack felt bigger, like it had sucked in its wooden ribs and made room. Eli sharpened his small knife because the sound soothed him, then set it aside. He rubbed the grit off his hat brim with his thumb until the leather warmed. Sometime in the middle of night, the fire sank to coals, and the canyon sang a colder tune. Eli fed it a few sticks, coaxed life, then stepped outside to take a long look at the stars. Arizona throws them by the bucket when the sky's honest, big as silver dollars, close as breath. He told them nothing, because stars talk more when you don't. When he came back, Tala had turned a fraction on the hay. The hard line around her mouth had gone. The fight was still there. People like her don't lose it. But it had set down its spear for an hour. In that light, she didn't look like trouble or trophy. She looked like a person who'd run out of places to be brave. Eli settled by the door again, boots crossed, hand near the rifle but not on it. A man could sleep, but a man who sleeps too deep in the desert wakes up lighter by a few things he didn't mean to lose. He let the night unspool, counting breaths he didn't own, feeling the country turn under a sky too wide for worry. Dawn slid in like a pale coin, quiet as an apology. The air took a bite out of him when he stepped outside with the canteen, walked to a trickle of water he'd learned to trust, and filled up slow. When he came back into the shack, Tala's eyes were open, clear, wary, curious. She looked at the doorway first, then at him. "You didn't leave," she said, a little surprise rounding the edges of the words. "Didn't plan to," he said. "Somebody had to make sure you didn't go proving you can walk and fall on your pride again." She considered that, then reached for the canteen. He steadied it. She drank, less stubborn about it than last night. "Eat a bite," he said, opening his kit, handing her a strip of jerky and a piece of biscuit that had seen better days. Stomach likes something to work on while ribs heal. She took it, sniffed like she might insult the cook, then chewed. "It tastes like fence," she said flat. "Best fence in 3 counties. He held up the willow paste. "Medicine's wearing off. You want more, say the word." Tala let her head tip back against the wall, eyes on the roofline's seam of light. "You help strangers," she said, not asking. "My pa told me once," Eli said. "You don't pick who deserves a hand. You just put your hand out." She watched him with that measuring look again. "Most men from your world don't do that." "Most ain't all," he said. She breathed a sound that might have been a laugh if it weren't so tired. After a moment, her gaze drifted to the bandage. "Your rope work is neat," she said. "Ma taught me quilts before Pa taught me cattle," he said. "I stitch ugly, she'd haunt me." Her mouth almost made that not-quite smile again. The sun had climbed enough to paint the far wall gold. Dust motes floated like tiny spirits working out a dance. Eli checked the cloth on her shoulder, fingers light. At the first brush, she murmured, "Easy, cowboy." He nodded. "I remember." They sat with the morning a while. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for filling. Eli's mind ran practical trails. Water, wood, how much shade the shack would throw by noon, the nearest flat spot if he had to fashion a travois. He thought through ways to move her without breaking what the night had mended. Finally, he said, "If you can stand later, we'll try for another day here. I'll keep the smoke low. Folks around these parts don't always see what's in front of them. They see what they're scared of." "Ranchers," she said. "Some are good," he said. "Some ain't. Same as anywhere." Tala's eyes thinned at the edge, something hard flashing there and gone. "My people will come," she said softly, certainty wrapped in warning. "Then we'll let them find you strong," Eli said, "and me sitting where you can see me." He set his hat on, rolled his shoulders, and stood. "I'm stepping out to scare up some prickly pear and maybe a cottontail if the Lord feels generous. I won't be far." Her gaze held him like a lariat. "If you hear riders," she said, "do not be brave. Be smart." Eli gave a half grin that didn't try too hard. "Ma'am, I was born both." She didn't smile, but the air changed a fraction, like the shack had let a friend in. As he ducked the doorway, her voice followed him. Quiet, steady, already a piece of his day. "Eli Boone," she said, testing the shape of him. "Thank you." He touched the brim without turning. "You're welcome, Tala." Outside, the canyon opened its jaws to the light, and the wind carried a promise and a threat in the same breath. Eli Boone stepped into it, a lone figure with a bay horse and 2 steady hands, knowing the trail had just bent in a way no map could show. Behind him, fire breathed, a bandage held, and a woman who had every reason to hate him had asked him not to leave. Some stories don't shout when they begin. They clear their throats in a miner's shack while the day gets born and a man learns to move gentler than he ever has. And somewhere, just under the ribs, a voice says it again, teasing and true as the land. Easy, cowboy. Morning rose like a slow-burning ember, pushing thin light through the cracks of the miner's shack. Eli Boone had been up for hours, sitting cross-legged near the doorway, knife in hand, shaping a piece of cedar into a peg. Dusty waited outside, tail flicking lazily, nose buried in the scrub that passed for breakfast. Inside, the air smelled of smoke, sweat, and willow bark. Half medicine, half campfire. Tala shifted on the bed of straw, wincing as she tried to sit up. The blanket slid off her shoulders, and for the first time Eli saw color back in her cheeks. "Slow down," he said, setting the knife aside. "You move too quick. Those ribs will remind you who's boss." She gave him a narrow look. "I have no boss. Didn't figure you did," he said, hiding a smile. "But pain don't listen to pride." Tala drew a careful breath. "Pain listens to nothing. It leaves when it wishes." Eli poured a tin cup of water and handed it to her. "Then let's hope it gets bored and leaves soon." For a heartbeat, she just stared at him. The easy calm in his face, the faint humor around his mouth. It was strange to her, that kind of gentleness from a man who carried a revolver and smelled of saddle leather. She took the cup, drank, and said, "You speak too much." "Yeah," he said. "My horse tells me that too." The corner of her mouth twitched, the smallest ghost of a smile. The shack filled with the low sound of her laugh, quick and sharp like a spark catching. Eli hadn't realized how much he'd missed that sound in life. A laugh, any laugh, clean and honest. He opened the pack that hung on the wall peg and brought out a strip of dried meat and a biscuit. "Eat something. You'll heal faster." "I heal when the spirits allow it," she said. But she took the food. Her stomach growled loud enough to betray her. Eli pretended not to notice, and she pretended she didn't care that he hadn't. The morning stretched thin. Dust motes floated like lazy bees in the shafts of light. Outside, a hawk screamed, a sound that always reminded Eli there were worse hunters than men. After a while, Tala spoke. "Where did you learn to fix wounds?" "My pa drove cattle," Eli said. "Long rides, long fights. Sometimes a man's all the doctor he's got. Picked up tricks from an old ranch medic. Got more practice than I wanted." She nodded slowly. "My father is a healer. He says the earth holds a cure for every hurt. You just have to listen." "Then I reckon I'm still learning the language," he said. Her eyes flicked toward him. "Maybe you are not deaf, just impatient." Wouldn't be the first time a woman told me that. That earned another faint laugh. Softer this time. The sound loosened something inside both of them, a rope tied too tight finally easing. By noon, the desert heat pressed through the shack walls. Eli stepped outside, hat low over his eyes, scanning the horizon. Nothing but mirage shimmer and the endless hush of the canyon. He went to Dusty's saddlebags and pulled a small pot and a strip of rawhide. Inside, he still carried the weight of her earlier words. The way she said, "My father is a healer." Half pride, half warning. When he returned, Tala had managed to stand, bracing on the wall. The firelight from last night had burned down to ash, and sunlight now claimed the place, showing every crack and splinter. Her hair caught the light, black as obsidian. "You're stubborn," he said, setting down the pot. "Most folks would still be lying flat." "I have been lying flat too long," she answered, breath shallow. "My body forgets how to fight if I rest." "Fighting's what got you laid out in the first place." She gave a small shrug, winced, and gritted her teeth. "Fighting keeps me alive." He met her gaze. "Reckon it does." They held each other's eyes longer than either meant to. The air between them was thick with something they couldn't name. Respect, maybe? Or loneliness finding its twin. By mid-afternoon, Eli had coaxed a small meal out of what the desert allowed. Prickly pear pads, singed clean, a strip of rabbit, some flour cakes browned on a flat rock. The smell filled the shack, earthy and good. Tala sat cross-legged, the blanket around her shoulders like a shawl. "You cook," she said, surprised. "Only when I want to eat," he said. She tasted the meat, chewed thoughtfully. "It is better than it looks." "Appreciate that glowing praise." Her eyes lifted from the plate. "Eli Boone," she said slowly, tasting his name again. "You talk like a man who hides behind jokes." He leaned back against the doorframe. "Maybe. Sometimes humor's lighter to carry than what's underneath." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once, as if that was an answer she understood too well. Late day settled into the canyon, turning the walls the color of fire brick and honey. Tala had drifted into a half-sleep when Dusty's ears pricked outside. Eli heard it too. Hooves on rock, distant but real. He moved to the doorway, rifle within easy reach. "Riders," he muttered. "3 of 'em." Tala tensed, fully awake. "Ranchers?" "Could be." Fear flickered quick in her eyes. Not for herself, but for what men like that could bring. "If they see me—" "They won't," he said. He pointed to the gap behind the shack, where the rock folded in on itself. "Go, stay low." She moved faster than he expected for someone half-broken. He grabbed a few rusted tools, scattered them near the door to look busy. Then he leaned his shoulder against the frame, playing the picture of a man too tired to care. The riders showed soon after. 3 silhouettes against the dying sun. Hank Dobbs, thick-shouldered and mean. Cole Ritter, sharp-jawed and jumpy. Jed Malone, the one who liked to laugh at his own cruelty. "Boone!" Hank called, reining in. "Heard smoke up this way. You camping out?" "Just catching shade," Eli said, easy. "Long haul from Dry Creek. Horse needed rest." Cole eyed the shack. "You alone?" "Looks that way." He kept his tone flat, eyes steady. "Unless you see ghosts." Jed chuckled. "Plenty of 'em around these hills. Red's been creeping close again. Couple herds gone missing." "Coyotes'll do that," Eli said. "Coyotes don't leave arrowheads," Hank snapped. "You spot any of them Apaches, you holler. You hear?" "Sure," Eli said. "If I see trouble, I'll point it your way." They didn't laugh. Dust hung in the air like gun smoke. Finally, Hank spat and jerked his reins. "Come on." The 3 turned back the way they came, suspicion trailing them like their own shadows. Eli waited until the hoofbeats faded before circling behind the shack. Tala crouched in the narrow shade, breathing fast. Her eyes met his. Hard, sharp, alive. "They would have killed me," she said quietly. "I know. You lied for me. Did what I had to." For a long second she didn't move. Then she reached out, pressed her hand against his sleeve, light as dust, gone almost as quick. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, the shack felt different. The walls held their voices, the silence gentler than before. Tala sat close to the small fire while Eli mixed another batch of herbs. The flames danced across her face, catching the deep brown of her eyes, the faint line of a scar near her temple. "You're not like most men," she said suddenly. Eli looked up. "You don't know most men." "I know enough," she said. "Your hands don't hurt when they touch." He stared into the fire. "Maybe that's 'cause I've learned how much hurt a careless hand can make." The crackle filled what words couldn't. Outside, coyotes sang to the moon. Tala listened, and for the first time since he'd found her, her shoulders eased. "My people say," she murmured, "the stars are spirits who once loved and still watch us." Eli lifted his eyes to the night through the door's open gap. The sky spilled over with stars, thousands crowding, listening. "Then I hope they know I mean no harm." "They know," she said. "They can feel your heart." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look she gave him was enough. A steady, wordless trust that hung between them like the glow of the coals. Hours passed. She lay down again, and he sat by the fire, hat brim low, rifle across his knees. Once or twice she stirred, muttering in her language, and every time he whispered back, "Easy, cowboy," just to hear her tease him in his mind, the way she had the first night. When dawn came, Eli stepped outside to fetch water. Behind him, Tala's voice carried soft through the doorway. "You didn't sleep?" He turned, half smiling. "Didn't have to. The company's good." For a moment she said nothing, just studied him, the sun catching in her eyes. "You risked your life for me," she said finally. "Why?" Eli looked past her, out to where the canyon broke open into light. "Because it's the right thing, and maybe because the world's been too long without anyone doing it." Tala nodded, the understanding between them quiet and whole. Outside, Dusty snorted, ready for the trail, but neither of them moved. The desert waited, and so did the story that would follow them. Morning broke wide and golden, stretching light across the canyon like someone had rolled out a strip of heaven. Eli Boone stood outside the shack, coffee tin in hand, watching the day climb. Dusty grazed in the brush nearby, flicking his tail at flies, his hide catching the sun like polished brass. Inside, Tala still slept, one arm across her ribs, the other draped loosely over the blanket. Her breathing had steadied through the night, and for the first time since he'd found her, she looked peaceful. Eli took a sip of the coffee. Burnt, bitter, perfect, and thought about the trouble he'd invited by staying. Men like Hank Dobbs didn't forget when they smelled a lie. They'd be talking now, riding through nearby ranches, spreading word that he'd gone soft or gone strange. Out here, either one could get a man shot faster than whiskey could spill. He dumped the dregs into the sand, set the tin down, and stepped back into the shack. The air was still warm from last night's fire. Tala blinked awake, her dark eyes adjusting, sharp as ever. "Morning," Eli said, keeping his tone light. She groaned softly, stretching. "You are still here." "Still am. You sound disappointed." Her lips twitched. "I dreamed you left. Thought maybe I scared you off." He grinned. "Takes more than a dream to scare me." She pushed herself up, slower than before, testing her ribs. He watched the small wince that passed across her face. "Better?" he asked. "Better," she said, though her voice held the weight of stubborn pride. "I can walk farther today." "Let's not test that theory," he said. "You'll tear something and prove me right, and I hate being right before breakfast." That earned him a soft laugh, half amusement, half defiance. The sound did something to him. It loosened the silence that had built in his chest these last few days. He went to his saddlebags, pulled out a strip of jerky, and tossed it onto a flat stone near her. "Eat. Then I'll check those bandages." "I am not your patient." "True," he said, "but you're under my roof, and my roof's got rules." She eyed him, pretending to be irritated. But she ate anyway. He caught her watching him from time to time, like she was trying to read the story carved into his weathered face. The day wore on, steady and slow. Eli patched up the cracks in the shack's roof, made sure Dusty had enough water, and rewrapped Tala's ribs with a gentler hand. When his fingers brushed her side, she whispered the old tease, "Easy, cowboy," and for the first time it sounded almost kind. By mid-afternoon, the air grew heavy. A faint hum of dust came from the south. A warning. Eli stepped to the doorway, squinting at the line of horizon. He knew that sound. Hoofbeats, far off but closing. 3 riders, maybe 4. His gut clenched. Tala, he said quietly. We've got company. She froze. Ranchers? Could be the same ones from yesterday. He glanced back at her. If it is, they won't be coming to talk polite this time. Tala's eyes sharpened. What will you do? What I always do. Improvise. She didn't smile. You should leave. They won't stop if they find me. Not leaving you here alone? Eli, he shook his head. Save your breath. If they're looking for trouble, they'll find it with me first. She looked at him long and hard, as though measuring the man she barely knew. Then, reluctantly, she nodded. There's a narrow pass behind the rocks, she said. If I hide there, you'll stay low and quiet till I give the word. Tala hesitated, then placed her hand briefly over his. Be smart, cowboy. Not brave. Brave's easier, he said. Smart takes thinking. The riders arrived not long after. Dusty snorted, sensing their approach. Eli stood in the open, one hand resting casually on the rifle by the door. The three figures slowed as they neared. Hank Dobbs, Cole Ritter, and Jed Malone, just as he expected. Sunlight flared off their gun barrels. Hank spat in the dirt. Well, look at that. Boone, still here, sitting pretty like you got nothing to hide. Morning, Hank, Eli said evenly. You boys out for a ride or looking to ruin mine? Cole's horse shifted, nervous from the tension. We been hearing things, Cole said. Ain't right. A man camping alone in Apache land? Jed laughed, mean and dry. Maybe Boone likes the company. Eli met their eyes one by one. You got something to say. Say it plain. Hank leaned in his saddle. We think you're hiding one of them. Word is a band of Apaches came through last week. Folks say one of their scouts went missing. You seen anything? Eli's pulse drummed, but his voice stayed calm. Just buzzards and rattlers. Funny, Hank said, grinning without humor. 'Cause we found hoof tracks not far from here. One of them light like a pony. Plenty of ponies out here, Eli replied. Not with Apache brands. For a long second, the desert held its breath. Heat shimmered between them. Eli's hand hovered near his rifle but didn't move. Finally, he said, If you're accusing me, get it done proper. Otherwise, I'd appreciate you letting me get back to doing nothing. Cole shifted in the saddle again, glancing toward the rocks behind the shack. Tracks lead that way, he said. Eli stepped forward, blocking his line of sight. I told you, there's nothing here but dust and bad manners. Hank's grin turned ugly. We'll see about that. Before Eli could stop him, Jed dismounted, boot heels crunching over gravel as he strode toward the back of the shack. Eli's muscles tightened. He needed to buy a few seconds. Hey, Jed, Eli called. You still owe me $5 from that poker game in Dry Creek. Jed looked back, smirking. Maybe I'll pay you when I'm done checking. Eli moved fast. He stepped between the man and the rocks, blocking his path. Don't, he said quietly. Jed's hand brushed the butt of his pistol. You gonna stop me, Boone? Eli's voice dropped. If I have to. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Cole, sensing the temperature, muttered, Hank, maybe we should let it go. Ain't worth... Hank cut him off. Shut it. If Boone wants to play hero, let him. Eli's jaw flexed. There's no hero here, Hank. Just 3 men riding too far into business that ain't theirs. Something in his eyes made even Hank hesitate. Finally, with a low curse, Hank jerked his reins. Come on, ain't worth the bullets. But if I find out you're lying, Boone, I'll be back. And next time, I won't knock. They turned their horses, riding off in a cloud of dust and suspicion. Eli stood still until their silhouettes faded into the glare. Only then did he let out the breath he'd been holding. Behind the shack, Tala stepped from the rocks, her movements silent as wind. Her face was pale, jaw tight. They would have killed me, she said quietly. I know. You lied for me. Did what I had to. She stared at him, her eyes dark pools of emotion, fear, gratitude, something else. Why? Eli shrugged. Didn't much like their tone. That made her laugh, soft and shaky. You make jokes when death walks near. Helps me keep my boots dry, he said. Her expression softened. You are strange, Eli Boone. Been called worse. That evening, the desert fell into a kind of peace again. But it was a fragile one. The sky flamed red, and the canyon swallowed the last heat of the day. They sat near the fire, the crackle and hiss filling the silence between them. Tala watched the flames, eyes reflecting their light. You could have died today, she said. Wouldn't be the first time I came close. You keep doing this, helping people who are not yours. It will be the last. Eli leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. Maybe, but I ain't built to walk away when someone's bleeding. Her gaze lingered on him. My father says some souls are born to heal, even when the world tries to break them. Your father sounds like a smart man. He is. Greyhawk. Eli looked up at the name. That's him? The healer? She nodded slowly. He will come for me. Eli stirred the fire with a stick. Then let's hope he comes peaceful. Tala's expression was unreadable. He will not trust you. Few men like you ever give him reason to. I don't need him to trust me, Eli said, just to let you live. She smiled faintly, the kind that carries both sadness and hope. Maybe he will see your heart the way I do. Don't give me too much credit, he said. The fire popped, throwing sparks into the dark. They sat without speaking for a long time, listening to the night breathe. Outside, the stars spilled across the black sky, bright and endless. When Tala finally lay down, Eli remained by the fire, staring at the glowing coals. The desert wind slipped through the cracks, whispering secrets in a language older than both of them. He touched the bandana around his neck, thinking about how quickly a man's life could twist, how a simple act of kindness could turn into a war he never asked for. He looked over at Tala. Her face was soft in sleep, the fierceness gone for now. He remembered the way she had said it that first night, her voice half broken, half teasing. Easy, cowboy. He smiled to himself, leaned back against the wall, and whispered into the fire. Easy, Boone. Tomorrow's another fight. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain from somewhere far away, and for a brief, fragile moment, Eli Boone let himself believe that peace might just be possible. Even here, on the edge of a world forever hungry for war. The morning rose with a pale light that looked tired before it even touched the earth. Eli Boone saddled up Dusty outside the shack, the air cool and still except for the rattle of a distant crow. For the first time in days, Tala stood without leaning on the wall. Her ribs were still bound tight under the clean bandages he'd made, but her eyes, those storm-dark eyes, had regained their fire. You sure you're strong enough to travel? Eli asked, tightening the cinch strap. I'm not weak, she said, a trace of her old pride in her tone. Never said you were, but pride don't keep a person from falling. She stepped closer, face serious beneath the strands of black hair blown loose by the wind. You helped me when you didn't have to. Now I must go back before my people think I'm dead. They will come looking, and not all who come will be kind. Eli nodded. Then let's make sure they find you, not your ghost. He slung his rifle over his shoulder and helped her mount Dusty. She resisted for half a heartbeat before letting him lift her up, stubborn to the end. The horse shifted under the shared weight, snorting, but obeyed. Eli walked beside them, one hand on the reins, boots kicking small puffs of dust from the trail. The canyon yawned open before them, gold and rust-colored cliffs, sun-baked rock, and shadows deep as secrets. For a long stretch they didn't speak. The only sound was the steady rhythm of hooves and the wind humming low between the walls. Finally Tala broke the silence. You could turn back, Eli Boone. This land isn't kind to your kind. Neither's the world, he said, but I'm still here." Her lips curved faintly. "You're a strange man, Cowboy." He grinned. "You keep saying that, I might start believing it." As they wound down the trail, the land began to change. The dry wash widened into a valley, scattered with mesquite and sage. Smoke rose thin and far off on the horizon, a faint column twisting against the sky. Tala's body went tense. "My people," she whispered. Eli followed her gaze. "That where home is?" She nodded, slow and unsure. "Yes, but we should not walk straight in. They won't see you as a friend." He studied her face. "Then I'll stay back till you say." Before she could answer, a rumble rolled through the air. Hoofbeats, many of them, coming fast. Tala's hand gripped the saddle horn. "They found us." Eli barely had time to reach for his rifle before they appeared. Riders sweeping over the ridge, the sun flashing off their spears and paint. Apache warriors, faces fierce, eyes like sharpened stone. Dust boiled around them as they closed in, forming a wide half-circle that cut off every escape. Eli froze, hands raised, rifle still slung. Dusty danced beneath him, uneasy. The riders shouted in their language, voices sharp, commands flying. Tala's voice broke through them, quick, loud, pleading. "Stop! He helped me!" For a second, confusion rippled through the ranks. Then one of the warriors, broad-shouldered, painted with red streaks, rode forward, spear aimed straight at Eli's chest. Tala slid off Dusty despite Eli's warning. "No, Red Deer, stop!" The warrior hesitated at her words, lowering the spear slightly. Another rider, Chenoa, a woman with braids tied in leather, dismounted and rushed to Tala's side. They spoke quickly, words tumbling like stones. Then the crowd parted. A man rode forward, older, taller than the rest. His hair streaked silver beneath a headband of rawhide. His eyes were clear and hard as river glass. Tala's breath caught. "Father," she said. Greyhawk reined in his horse, the animal stamping the ground with impatience. He looked down at her, his face unreadable. "You live," he said in his native tongue, then turned his gaze toward Eli. The look in those eyes could have split rock. He said something short and harsh. Tala translated, her voice shaking. He asks, "Why you are with me?" Eli met the man's stare. "Tell him I found you hurt, that I couldn't leave you to die." She repeated his words. Greyhawk listened, stone-faced. Then he dismounted, boots striking the earth like thunder. He walked slow around Eli, sizing him up as if he could read every sin the cowboy had ever committed. Eli stood still, unflinching. "I mean no harm," he said quietly. "Only helped." Greyhawk spoke again, softer now, the edges of command still in his voice. Tala replied, her tone gentler, explaining everything. The fall, the canyon, the nights by the fire, the men who had hunted them. When she finished, silence settled heavy as dusk. Finally, the chief nodded once. His words came haltingly in English. "You... doctor?" Eli shook his head. "No, sir. Just a cowboy who knows a few tricks." Greyhawk's eyes flicked toward Tala's side. "She is healed?" Eli nodded. "Mostly. Needs rest, but she'll ride again." Something in the old man's expression shifted. A small ripple of respect, maybe even gratitude. He reached into a leather pouch hanging from his belt and drew out a small deerskin bag tied with a strip of turquoise. He held it out to Eli. "For pain," he said simply. Eli accepted it, bowing his head slightly. "Thank you." The chief's voice deepened. "Few white men help. You, different." Eli swallowed, trying to be. The tension bled from the air, though the warrior's eyes still burned with caution. Tala stepped between them, her face lit with emotion. "You see," she told her father, "he is not like the others." Greyhawk didn't answer at first. He turned to mount his horse again, speaking quietly to his daughter in their own language. Then, without warning, he looked back at Eli. You go now, he said. Not safe here. Eli hesitated, but Tala touched his arm. He means it, Eli. They will not hurt you, but you cannot stay. He nodded slowly. I understand. He turned to fetch Dusty, tightening the strap that had come loose. As he swung into the saddle, Greyhawk stopped him again, lifting a hand. Wait. The old man reached into his saddlebag once more and pulled out something else. A feather, black-tipped and smooth, bound in leather. He handed it to Eli. For courage, he said, and remembrance. Eli took it carefully, his throat tight. I'll keep it safe. Greyhawk's stern mouth softened just enough to show the ghost of a smile. You good man, he said. Few like you. Tala stood close, eyes bright in the fading sun. Go, she whispered, before they change their minds. He wanted to speak, wanted to tell her that he'd never forget her laughter, or how she'd said easy, cowboy with that half-smile that always reached her eyes. But the words caught. Instead, he touched her arm gently, voice low. Take care of yourself, Tala. She nodded. And you, Eli Boone, don't forget what you learned here. Not a chance, he said. As he rode away, the Apache riders watched in silence. The desert stretched before him, endless and wild. Behind him, Greyhawk's people began to move, escorting Tala back toward their camp. When Eli finally dared to look over his shoulder, he saw her still standing there, framed by the red glow of sunset. Her hair blew like dark smoke against the sky. She raised her hand in a small, wordless farewell. He tipped his hat. Then, without another word, he nudged Dusty forward and rode on. The sound of hooves echoed off the canyon walls, fading into the hush of twilight. The trail bent, the land swallowing her figure, but the image stayed. Tala, unbroken and proud, her voice lingering in the wind like a prayer. Easy, cowboy. That night, Eli made camp by a shallow creek. The stars spread wide overhead, the same ones she said were spirits of those who once loved and still watched. He held the small deerskin pouch and the feather in his palm, turning them in the firelight. They weren't just gifts. They were a bridge. Between him and a world he'd never truly understood. Between mercy and survival. Between a man and a woman who'd met by accident and changed each other forever. He tucked the pouch into his coat, the feather beside it. Then he leaned back against a rock, staring at the flames licking the night air. In that glow, he could almost see her sitting across the fire again, her voice teasing, her eyes fierce and kind all at once. He smiled faintly, speaking to the emptiness that had suddenly grown too big to ignore. Guess the desert knows how to find company when it wants to. Above him, the stars blinked like they were listening. Somewhere far off, a coyote called, its cry long and lonely, but not sad. Just true. Eli Boone lay back, hat tipped low, the fire crackling beside him. Tomorrow he'd ride on. But tonight, the wind carried her name through the canyon, soft and steady, as if the land itself refused to forget. Tala. The cowboy closed his eyes and let the desert sing him to sleep. The season turned, and the canyon remembered. Wind chased dust through the old miner's shack, carrying the scent of rain and juniper, and somewhere far down the trail, the memory of a woman's voice still lingered like a half-finished prayer. Eli Boone had been riding the desert alone for weeks. Since parting ways with Tala and her people, he'd drifted from ranch to ranch, fixing fences, tending sick cattle, patching up wounded drifters and beaten horses. Folks started calling him the Cowboy healer. He never corrected them. He didn't stay long anywhere. A man like him couldn't. The world didn't trust kindness for free, and Eli didn't have the words to explain why he kept offering it anyway. At night, by the fire, he'd take the deerskin pouch and feather from his saddlebag, turning them over in his hands. The turquoise beads caught the light like bits of the desert sky. He'd think about Tala, her voice, her laughter, the way she looked when the sun hit her hair. And every time, the same whisper would drift through the dark. Easy, cowboy. One evening, near the small town of Crow's Bend, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked against the mountains, and the sky opened up like it had been holding its breath too long. Eli was riding back from a ranch job when he saw smoke rising through the rain. A campfire that shouldn't have been there. When he got closer, he saw a wagon half-tipped in a ditch, its wheel broken. A woman knelt in the mud beside it, clutching a small boy who was crying. "Ma'am?" Eli called out. "You need a hand?" The woman looked up, soaked through, eyes wide with fear. "My boy, he's hurt. Fell when the wheel broke." Eli swung down from Dusty without a thought. "Let's take a look." The boy's leg was twisted wrong, swelling under the skin. Eli's chest tightened. "We need to set that bone before the storm gets worse." He tore a strip from his saddle blanket, used 2 pieces of wood as splints, and worked by lightning flashes. The woman held her son's hand, whispering prayers between sobs. When it was done, Eli tied the leg firm and helped carry the boy into the wagon. The wind howled, tearing at his coat, and rain soaked them through. He lit a small fire under the wagon's cover and handed the woman a blanket. "You'll make it through the night," he said. "Once the storm breaks, I'll help you into town." The woman's voice shook. "You're a good man, mister." Eli shook his head. "Just doing what's right." Her eyes softened. "Most men don't stop anymore." He looked away. "Then most men forgot what being a man means." The next morning, the storm was gone, leaving the world washed clean. Eli walked the woman and her boy into Crow's Bend. The townsfolk recognized him. A few tipped their hats. Others just watched from porches, whispering. Old Martha Clay, who ran the general store, met him at the edge of the street. "Well, if it ain't Eli Boone," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Heard tell you patched up another one." He smiled faintly. "Kid broke his leg. He'll be fine." Martha looked him up and down. "You keep fixing folks. You'll run out of bandages before you run out of people. Wouldn't be the worst way to go," he said. She laughed. "You sound more preacher than cowboy these days." "Don't tell the horse," he said, nodding toward Dusty. "He still thinks we're outlaws." Later that day, as he sat outside the livery stable, a rider came tearing into town, dust flying off his horse like smoke. Eli stood up instinctively. The rider slid off and called out, "Any of you know the man they call Boone? There's sickness spreading through the Apache camp near the river. Folks say he can heal." Eli froze. "Tulla." Without another word, he tightened his saddle and mounted up. Martha called after him, "You sure, Eli? That's their land." "I'm sure," he said, and kicked Dusty into a gallop. The ride took half a day. The air grew heavy with smoke and sickness before he even saw the camp. Dozens of tents scattered along the riverbank, the smell of fever thick in the wind. He rode in slow, hands visible, the feather and pouch hanging from his saddle horn. The Apache guards lifted their weapons but didn't fire. One of them, Chenoa, recognized him. "You come back," she said. "Word got to me someone's sick," Eli answered. "Let me help." After a pause, she nodded and led him inside. Inside the largest tent, Tala knelt beside a child burning with fever. Her hands trembled as she wiped the boy's face with a wet cloth. When she looked up and saw Eli, her eyes widened, disbelief flickering into relief. "You came," she whispered. "Seems I can't keep away," he said softly. She rose unsteadily to her feet. "The sickness spreads fast. We've lost 3 already." Eli dropped his saddlebag to the ground. "Show me what you've been using." Together they worked through the day and into the night, boiling water, mixing herbs, cooling the fevered. Eli showed them how to use willow bark for pain, how to wash wounds clean, how to breathe through the fear. Tala moved beside him like a shadow, never tiring, her strength coming from something deeper than the body. When the sun came up, the worst had passed. The air felt lighter, the silence less heavy. Tala stood outside the tent, looking at the river as it shimmered in the new light. Eli joined her. "They'll pull through," he said. She nodded. "You saved them." He shook his head. "We did." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind stirred the feathers in her hair, brushing against his arm. "You shouldn't have come," she said finally. "Your people will never forgive you for helping mine." "Maybe not," he said, "but I'd rather do right by my heart than by their hate." She turned to him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "My father said you would come back. Greyhawk's a wise man," he said quietly. "He was," she whispered. "He died last moon." Eli's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. He died proud. Said he met one white man whose heart beat like the earth itself." Eli swallowed hard, unable to find words. She reached into a small pouch and pulled out a turquoise charm. "The Spirit Stone. He wanted you to have this," she said, "to remember what he believed." Eli took it gently, feeling the smooth stone against his palm. "I'll carry it always. And what will you do now, Eli Boone?" He looked out at the horizon. "Same as before, I reckon. Keep riding. Keep fixing what's broken." Tala smiled softly. "The world could use more men like you. Maybe it just needs more people like you," he said. Their eyes met. Two worlds. Two hearts that had no map between them but somehow still found the same place. Before leaving, Eli walked through the camp, saying goodbye to those he'd helped. The children followed him, their laughter chasing away the last ghosts of sickness. Tala stood at the edge of the camp, watching him mount up. When he turned to look back, she raised her hand. "Go with peace, cowboy." He tipped his hat, his voice low. "And you, Tala." He rode off into the bright morning, the Spirit Stone warm against his chest, Dusty's hooves drumming the rhythm of an old hymn. Months later, back near Crow's Bend, folks still told stories about him. The cowboy who rode alone, who could fix a man's bones and a woman's faith in the same night. Some said he was half healer, half ghost. Others swore he was touched by the desert itself. But those who knew better said this: when the wind passed through the canyons at dusk, if you listened close enough, you could hear a woman's voice, soft and sure, whispering through the sand. "Easy, cowboy." And somewhere out there, Eli Boone would tip his hat to the setting sun and whisper back, "I hear you." Now tell me, friend, if you were Eli Boone, would you have risked everything for a stranger? Would you have ridden into a storm just to keep your word? And do you believe the desert truly remembers those who do right, even when no one's watching? If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you